and that in I guess I'll start. So first of all, thank you. I appreciate you guys doing this. One, for doing it, and two, for being my guinea pigs. So we'll see. And part of my plan is to have you guys do it, and then I'll be able to show that to some of the other guys that we want to talk to. So, so yeah, thank you. I appreciate you guys doing it. Like I told you, kind of the heart of the podcast, I think if you summarized it in like one simple statement, it would be, show me your kids and I'll tell you if I want your parenting advice. Right. And I think that's the thing. Like there's even, I heard a story recently about a therapist who was all prepared to give somebody some advice on writing a book about parenting, and in the process couldn't be recorded because she said she had a daughter who would disown her if she found out she was talking to her. And I thought, well, that may not be the best results as a parent, right? So just because people have advice on it doesn't necessarily mean they're good at it. So, but I also want to say this too, because just to kind of, hopefully not everybody who sees this is going to know who you are. I would say you're just a great example of kind of an all-American family, right? You guys are middle-class family, you got 2 kids. You work in the auto industry. I know. So you don't have a background in therapy that I don't know about or anything
that I know of.
All right.
So my wife might tell you I should be committed occasionally. But.
So it's the other way. It's not a good thing that therapy comes up. So I think that's I think that's important too, right? Like it's not. You see things online, you see, whether it's therapists or psychologists or professionals giving advice or celebrities or whatever. But I think, I think it's important to get real life advice from real life people. Mm-hmm. So, and then the real reason we're here, which is Logan, I asked your dad kind of send me some of your accolades. Okay. And so we'll try to embarrass you here.
He's kind of humble, so you probably will embarrass.
Probably. You may not plug your ears. You don't want to hear
He
this.
doesn't like talking about himself a whole lot. So.
All right. Well, that's all right. We're going to do it for you. So you graduated with a 4.14. Nice job. As a kid, I wouldn't even known you could go over 4.0. So a 1450 on your SAT. With a combined SAT and GPA, you were number 1 in your class. It's awesome. Service stuff, you served in the Corona Youth baseball and basketball as camp assistant, unified basketball coach. That's a big one for our school. That's our kind of special needs.
The RESD program that they walk with us to the graduates for that year. But you just play basketball with them at halftime. Get to let them have fun, and it's cool too because it's at halftime, so all the fans are there watching. They get the full experience. So that's the fun thing is they're shooting shots and they're smiling, and that makes you want to smile. That makes you happy. So
there's not a lack of a smile in the whole building when it's going on. It's awesome. So great that you do that. You worked in Corona Athletic Club concession stand. Old Newsboys of Flint. What is that?
We raise money. It's something I've been doing for about 25 years. We raise money for kids at Christmas time so that no kid is left without at Christmas time. There's a couple things that we do. One's a golf scramble.
That's what I mostly help with.
Yeah, that's how he's helped with is that. And every year we make about $25,000 per year, and it all goes to the kids.
Usually I help with the raffle stuff. So they raffle off a bunch of stuff, and I'll help cross off tickets and whatnot. Anything I can't help.
Okay, so help with that. Communities First of Flint, help with that. Toys for Tots, help with that. UAW Local 659 Community Service, Corona Rotary Club, Corona Historical Commission's Parks and Rec, Peter Sunny Day Foundation. I know I'm kind of zipping through these. And then on your athletic stuff, you were an academic all-state in basketball and baseball. First team all-conference baseball at second base. First team Argus Press as a pitcher. Lansing State Journal all-area as a pitcher. All-conference basketball point guard. And now you've pitched 18 innings as a freshman at Hope College. So, I would say all those things, I think they're easy accolades to identify, but they're not easy to get. And it's not just talent, right? We know coaches say it all the time, a lot of kids have talent, but you got to be willing to have the drive. So I think that speaks to your character a lot too. And all of those things said, the biggest reason that you're here is because I know you personally, and I know the way you act, and I know that you have you have a great character. I think you're a very kind person, but you carry yourself well. You're, you even mentioned early on, he's humble. But
Thank you.
you're, yeah, no, I promised I'd embarrass you. So, but you're thoughtful. I know and this isn't just for me either. My kids have been able to interact with you too. And, Christian's even shared stories with me about you kind of encouraging him on the basketball team. So, I think you're just, I think you're a respectful person. I think the way you talk to people, it's so if we said none of the other things, that to me is a huge win as a dad, right? Like that's if you had all those accolades and you were a jerk, we wouldn't be talking right now. Right. So I think that's huge. So I think you're just a great guy all around, and that really is at the heart of why I wanted to talk to you. In the true story. I've been thinking about doing this for a while. This has been like on my idea list for a couple of years. And I'm not just saying this. When I thought about doing it, you were literally the first person I want to talk to, you guys specifically. Because I think you kind of exemplify. I can't imagine a dad who would meet Logan and go, I wouldn't want my kid like that. Just the opposite. You're going to have guys who are going to go, if I raise a kid like that, I'm going to be really happy. So that now that I've thoroughly embarrassed you, we'll get into like the actual questions. And there's a million things I would want to ask you, but there's a few that I definitely want to hit. And I know we kind of got a hard out in about 50 minutes or less. So the first thing I really wanted to ask is, if you can kind of go back to when you first became a dad, what thoughts did you have around like the kind of parent you want to be? What style of parenting were you going to have? Did you think about any of that kind of stuff?
The style of parenting kind of came along over time, as you work through it. I mean, you can read a million books, but until you are a parent and deal with it, I did see there were two guys that I worked with when I was an apprentice electrician, and two different journeymen, and they were like night and day on the way that they handled themselves and their family, and they were the examples kind of I want to be more like this guy than that guy. And the one guy worked 7 days a week, 12-hour days, didn't spend a lot of time with his family. Now, he made enough money that he'd take them on one or two nice trips a year, but he wasn't there all the time. He wasn't present. And the other guy was just the opposite. He'd work his 40 hours a week. He might occasionally work a little bit of overtime, but he coached his kids' Little League baseball team. He coached their football. He was involved with Boy Scouts. They wanted to be in Boy Scouts. The first dad, who didn't spend as much time with his kids, and I'm not knocking somebody that's 32 years old, still living in mom and dad's basement, but that his kids were still there. They didn't have jobs. They were still at home. The other guy who spent all this time with his kids and was present, one ended up going to U of M to be an oral surgeon, and the other one ended up being a lawyer. And not that their careers is necessarily that they're a great person or whatever, but they turned out to be really good people, really well-adjusted adults. And the big key for me was just be present. I want to be there for as much as I can, and that's what I've tried to do for Logan. I have a daughter, too, Allison, so I want to mention Allie, too. I want her to be there.
I didn't mean to leave her out, because I know she's a great girl, too.
But I wanted to be there for the kids. That was the biggest thing that I learned out of watching those guys was be present. If you're present, your kids are going to go far in life and know that they're cared for. So
I think this is an awesome point because I said going into this, just thinking about there's kind of the two dads that I'd love to be able to speak to. Is one is there's the ones who want to be present, who want to do a better job, and I'm hoping for some words of wisdom, and I know you've got them whether you realize you do or not. So I definitely want to share something valuable to them, but then I also think of that dad who's wants the pinnacle of success as opposed to like, how do I balance that with the time I spend with my kid? So that's huge. I mean, just being present is usually enough. I mean, dads are going to make a million mistakes. I think like I said, when I sent you the kind of the things to think about is like, look, we all make mistakes. We'd all fix a few things. Yep. But at the end of the day, if you make that effort, if you're present, like it's going to result. So did he feel pretty present when you were growing up?
There wasn't a game he missed. Yeah. Wasn't a practice, nothing. He was there every time.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, because this is, I think, a really interesting question. How would you say you raised your kids differently from the way you were raised, or did you? Or how was it similar? How was it different? Did you want to be different? Did you want to be similar? Had you thought about that?
I guess I didn't think about it back then, but I spent more time with my kids, and I gave them more opportunities, I guess, to grow. For me, it was kind of, and part of it, we lived out in the country, so we weren't in the city close enough to maybe do some things. But I didn't have an opportunity to do a lot of the things that I would have liked to. Looking back, I could have talked to my parents, 40 years ago and say, hey, why don't you get me involved with this? Why don't you get me involved with this? For Logan and my daughter Allie, we tried to give them every opportunity. Let them try things.
Yeah.
Try things, whether it be sports, music, arts, whatever it is. Try things, see what you like, and
see what you don't like.
Yeah, see what you don't like.
I didn't like being an Oompa Loompa.
Oh, I can't believe you brought that one up. That's a good one.
Oh gosh, I already got to hear this story.
So it's one we laugh about all the time. He would have been, I think, about 8 years old, and I was coaching his baseball team. He was playing in the Corona Rec League. It was last year that he played in the Corona Rec League, and he loved baseball, always has. His sister has always been in a lot of like musicals. She's always been the star of a lot of Corona plays, and the Owasso Community Players had Willy Wonka, or Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. They had a version of it, and she got picked for one of the lead roles. Well, when the tryouts happened, we took Logan and we're like, you want to go try out for it? And he's like, yeah, I could be an Oompa Loompa. And our thought was, and his thought was that was like an extra, so you could just show up once a week, just dance a little bit, and you were good, where my daughter would probably have to be there all the time because she was one of the lead characters in it. She played Violet, I believe, in that.
Yeah, that wasn't the case at all. I was there about 3 times as much as she was. It was like every day of the week you're choreographing some silly little dance and whatnot. For her, it was like twice a week they'd go read over their lines or something. And the thing that sucked was I was missing baseball all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So
it drove him nuts to be missing baseball and be an Oompa Loompa. So needless to say, he found out he didn't want to be on Broadway or be in musicals. He'd rather be playing baseball. So
yeah, you made it all the way through though.
Yeah,
you finished
didn't
it.
Quit.
Yeah. Is that so? Since that come up though, it does make me think. Where did you guys stand on that? Because I know that's one that I watch kids drop out of sports here and there, and I gotta guess that's probably not something you were cool with. If you're in, you're in until it's over.
Yep, you're gonna complete it, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Whatever if you agreed to sign up for it, then you're in for the long haul, and give your best, which he did. He actually did really well at it. He was
as well as you can be. Don't fluff me up too much. He an 8-year-old.
Of all your accolades, Oompa Loompa was
he
not
can't
at
sing
the top.
a lick.
All
So
right.
thankfully there were 30 or 40 other kids to drown him out singing. But he is pretty athletic, so he bounced around the stage pretty well. So
that's funny. Yeah, no, that's cool. And it doesn't sound like he had to. I mean, if you got in something, you kind of probably knew that going in. If I'm in it, I got to finish it.
It was that young age where I hadn't really learned that yet. It was more of I'm in it. Dad, I hate this. Well, you signed up. You're going to finish it.
So
more of what. So it was more of a learning experience than I knew what it was going in.
Okay. Good. Yeah. No, that's cool. So, what about discipline for you guys? And how did that evolve over time? Were you guys? Would you say you were strict parents? And I'm going to ask you because I want to know your opinion on that too. Because the kids' opinion is usually totally different. But where did you guys? I'm always curious too, because I think spanking is a bit of a hot topic these days, and I'm not saying it's all good or all bad, but I think there needs to be thought in it if you do it, but I don't want to say too much. Where were you guys at discipline wise from kind of very young age all the way through?
Well, the spanking thing, honestly, I don't know if him or Allie got a spanking after they were about 3 years old, maybe, or 2 or something, and even then it wasn't like hard or anything like that. It was. They were about to go knock over the lamp, and it'd be a no. We'd say no, and then they'd keep on going. No, and then when the hand got on it, all right, you're going to get a little swat on the rear end. And that even then, that might have been a handful of times ever that we had to, because it took once or twice, and then they figured out no means don't go touch that lamp or knock that lamp over or whatever, something like that. And honestly, I don't remember maybe after that age, 2, 3 years old. The discipline, and maybe I was just blessed with pretty good kids, but we really didn't have a lot of issues with them growing up. Logan, and he can tell you more about it, but he surrounded himself with a pretty good group of friends that to this day they still get together regularly. Other Corona boys that they, I don't want to toot their horn too much, but they were good kids. They were, like you mentioned, Logan. If somebody met Logan and said, I wish I had a son like that, that's kind of I'd want. These other boys are just like that too. So they're still his best friends.
Yeah.
And that made a difference, I believe. There's peer pressure and things like that out there. But when you have a half dozen other kids that are like you, that don't want to get in trouble, that just want to do good in school and do the best he can in life and sports and everything else, it makes it a little bit easier. So it made it easier on me as a parent.
Yeah. Well, and so a couple of things. One is I think they talk about first time discipline, like especially when they're little, so they they connect it really quickly. I can't do this or I get in trouble. But then I also think, it brings up another point that kind of put this whole thing in my head in the first place is you were surrounded by a lot of good guys as a general rule. And I think it's interesting because when you look at the group that you graduated with, I think you have a lot of kids who had active dads. And I think a lot of those kids were your friends, and it's I don't want to downplay the importance of moms. Certainly, I mean we all appreciate and value what moms bring to the table, but when you look at the statistics around dads, I mean it has a huge impact on the way kids grow up, and it's crazy because you can see it. Like you see the group that you graduated with, and so many of those kids. Obviously, there's exceptions, but I would even say some of the exceptions found father figures like you and like some of the other dads who were engaged in coaching and doing all these things. And so you just see like you see like the whole group getting stronger for that reason. So that's a cool point too. But then, and so I'm curious, would you have said you were a pretty strict parent, or were you pretty easygoing?
I guess I'll let Logan answer that because I'm thinking I was probably just somewhere in the middle. There were probably some more strict parents than me. I know there were more lenient parents than me.
Yeah.
And my wife, but I don't know. What do you think,
If you would have asked me this 5 years ago or any time around growing up and whatnot, I would have said you guys were the strictest parents ever.
It's so funny.
But looking back, no, very middle. I thought it was just the right amount of, we're going to take your stuff away because you didn't do your chores or you acted up in school, you did stuff you weren't supposed to. It was a psychology term I remember from high school, positive punishment, negative, stuff like that. So they gave me punishments and stuff, because I deserved it. But looking back, you guys are jerks. You guys are the worst. You're so mean.
Oh, good. Okay, I'm not the only one who's been called a jerk by my kid. All right, good.
But looking back, it works because I didn't go doing bad stuff in school again or whatnot. So
yeah,
I wouldn't say too bad.
I can't think of a single young adult who had, and that's where I go strict. Like I know we talk about discipline, we immediately kind of think of spanking, but the reality is discipline is a whole wealth of things, right? Like you said, the phone, you just lost your phone. You did what I told you not to do, whatever the case may be. And so, I think there's a lot more to discipline than just a spanking, certainly. And I think spanking is kind of the least of it, if anything, maybe. But it's, I think when you think of strictness too, I think we tend to want to be less strict than our parents. And I don't know if you'd say that was true for you. But then I think as parents, we always think we're not that strict, but then my kids do the same thing, by the way. They'll like, I don't think I'm strict, but then they'll actually refer to, we are the strict parent. There's like two types of parents. There's easygoing and then there's the strict ones. And I think strict is just, we have rules.
Right.
It's kind of that simple. So I think that, that separation is pretty typical. I guess if you could go back, is there things you would have done differently? I know we touched on that a little bit, but.
Not really, not a whole lot that I would change. There were a couple years you talked about your job that took you away. There were a couple years that my job, the GM facility I worked at, shut down, so I ended up in another one on second shift, and it's nothing that I could have changed. Because I ended up on second shift there, missed out on time that I wish I could have been there more. during that little time. But I used every minute of vacation time I had to make every baseball game I could, or every musical, whatever it was that the kids had going on. So, but again, it's nothing that I could change. Just I wish the circumstances could have changed.
Gotcha. Did you do you have any any favorite a favorite moment as a dad or?
You know, I mean, there's all these things. You mentioned all the accolades that Logan had. My daughter had a lot of accolades too. But it's not those things. The things that matters most is, and I told Logan the other day for Father's Day, what he said, what do you want? And well, I just like us together, the family sitting together at a table, laughing, playing euchre or something like that. Those are the best times for me, So those are the times that stand out. Logan doing his Oompa Loompa thing. They're funny stuff, I mean, but I got a million of them like that. I'm a shrine clown too, an elf crawford shrine clown. So one of the things was and I don't know if you remember this, when we did a skit where I got shot out of a cannon, and he really believed I got shot across the arena out of a cannon. Just little funny memories like that pop up, And I mean, I'm sure we all got 100 of them like that, but the family time together, that's the biggest for me. And you mentioned earlier too that even with all those accolades, the kind of person he is, and really that trumps all of it. It doesn't matter, and I'm really proud of him and Allie for everything they've accomplished. But the thing I'm most proud of is that they're good adults. They're good people. They want to give back to others. They want to help others. That's what I'm most proud of.
Yeah. Any standout moments for you?
In what regard?
Just growing up, like times with your dad that stick out?
Definitely like the youngest of baseball, because that's like my pride and joy, and he introduced me to that. So I would say that's kind of the standout for me. Is he was always my t-ball coach and whatnot. 5, 6, 7 years old, and those are my first ever memories of playing baseball, and I got to learn everything from my dad. So I would say that introduction was so positive that it sparked me to want to play, the rest of my life.
Yeah, how was he as a coach?
Pretty good.
Yeah,
I would say.
Was he tougher on you than everybody else, or was he pretty even keel?
I didn't feel that way, but I also can't remember it too well. Okay. I feel it was probably more easygoing, and it would have gotten pretty strict if you were able to coach if you didn't get moved to Lansing as I would have gotten older. But no, I didn't think he was too bad of a coach on me or anything like that.
Yeah,
I was a little harder on him, and not harder so much. Just there were times where maybe he would have played, maybe he would have pitched more, or maybe he would have been my cleanup hitter or whatever. And there were times where I used somebody else just because I didn't want any parent to think there was favoritism.
Yep.
So there were a few times like that it wasn't, he didn't get robbed by any means, but some other kid got 2 innings to pitch and he only got to pitch 1 inning because I didn't want anybody to think anything, if there was favoritism or daddy ball there. So
no, I feel like good dads, that is, if anything, you tend to be a little tougher on your own kid. So it versus the flip, which drives everybody crazy, right? If you've got that coach who's giving their kid excessive playing time, especially if people are looking around going, I don't know if he deserves it. So yeah, I can appreciate that. I don't coach, but I know when I'm doing things with my kids and other kids involved, I tend to be more apt to like give a little extra time to the other kids. I guess I think my kids get enough.
Yep.
So yeah, that's cool. Anything you can think of where advice you'd give to dads? I know you said, be there, right? Like that's a big one. Anything like, do you ever, let me ask you this. Do you ever find yourself, I know one of my biggest frustrations is when I get mad and I yell at my kids. I yell more than I should. One is, obviously, I wish I did it less. I don't ever think it's productive. Generally, it's not productive. Sometimes I think it's maybe a little productive. That said, though, I feel like that's a pretty common one for dads. I think every dad gets there at some point with frustration. And I think it's also important for dads to know, like, it's not the end of the world. Your kid is going to survive. If anything, you're probably going to make him a little tougher. So did you ever find yourself doing that? Ever catch yourself getting angrier than you wish you were?
Logan, he forgot to get his chores done today. Whatever, something like that. But usually it was, I'm mad for about 5 seconds, and then it's like, all right, let's talk about it. What can we do better next time? That kind of thing. So
you're pretty good at. So when you, I would have gaps where I wouldn't have a sport or something at times, and he works first shift, so he gets up 4:30, whatever, and usually he's getting back at 9:30, whatever, from a sport that I had. So if he gets back at 9:30, probably doesn't get to bed till 10:30, waking up at 4:30, running on 5-6 hours sleep. Usually wants a nap when he gets home. As a kid, I don't understand that. I want to be loud all the time. So I get home from school, and this was when the video games were pretty popular. So I'd be, and I'm yelling. Our rooms are right next to each other. I'm yelling on the video games, and eventually I get way too loud. He's trying to take a nap. Comes out, Logan, and that's his favorite thing, to yell really loud. Sorry, I don't want to make that sound the wrong way. Didn't say that all the time. That just
Those handful of times.
handful of times. But go back. All I really needed was a nap. Comes back, Logan. Sorry, didn't mean to yell at you. Just please understand. You know, I'm only getting like 5 hours of sleep a night and trying to work full time. So I would say that might be a sticking.
That's a good point too, though. The fact that you come back and address it, I think that's a good one for dads. I think it's just remembering, like, you know, I think owning it with your kids is big.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep. Yeah, we're not perfect, and even dealing with other adults too. You know, there's times where, you know, sometimes something will happen, and then you'll realize later, you know what, I could have handled that better. Just go man up. Just go talk to whoever it was, and but yep, we try to do that as much as possible. So.
well, and I think you model behavior more than you teach it, right? I
Mhm.
mean, you can try. I always think the things I try to teach, I swear, go nowhere. But the things I model, they get. So yeah, there's a lot more value in that. What about like?
Hence your nickname, the Buckaroo. There was a country song called "Watching You" by Rodney Atkins. I don't know if you've heard it before, but anyway, in the song, the guy, he's got a little boy who was about the same age in the video as Logan was at that time, and
6-year-old
yeah,
boy.
he calls it his little Buckaroo, and that was his nickname, was Buckaroo, and then it turned into Bucky. And it's still to this day we still
The
call
song's
him
all
that
about, I
sometimes.
want to be like you, Dad. I want to eat
And-
like you. I want to work like you. whatnot.
and the kid, you know, the dad, in one of the lines in the song was that the guy stopped at a stoplight real quick, and the little kid's fries went flying, and the little kid said a swear word.
Yeah.
He learned it from Dad. He watched Dad. Well, then later, the little kid is praying before he goes to bed, and
Learned it from Dad.
I learned it from Dad. You know, so anyway, that song, the Buckaroo song. But
That-
you do, and the whole premise of it was you see something and you can pick it up. You know, you learn from watching others. In most cases, your dad. That's who. So hopefully, he learned a few good things from me. So.
Well, it's such a cool story too, because the other thing I heard from a psychologist one time that there is when your kids are young, there is no one on earth who wants a relationship with you more than they do. Like every kid desperately wants that relationship with their parent. And I think it's easy to get caught up in the stuff that you're doing and miss the chance that you have this little human who thinks the world of you no matter what. And but if you miss that window when they're young, you know, I think of the Cats in the Cradle song, right? Like that's the
Absolutely.
one that I think haunts
Yeah,
haunts
absolutely.
dads, right? Like
Yep.
if the thing is, if you miss that chance where they desperately want to be with you, you know what I mean? The day's going to come when they're going to,
Yep.
you know, they're not going to want to be around you.
Right.
So,
Hey, Dad, can I borrow the car keys?
Right.
Or, you know, I'd rather do that than spend time with you. Where you missed the boat on it. So.
yeah, so that's a cool story. So, what about chores? Did you guys have chores in the house? Did you have responsibilities?
He still
got
has
'em.
chores.
Still got 'em. Yeah, it's more of teaching that everyone has a part to play in the family. I think looking back now, hated to do them when I was younger, but no, yeah, I would vacuum once a week, and we have our little garbages throughout the house, and I'd empty them into the big one, and pick up dog poop, stuff like that.
Yep. Till the day he moves out, he'll still have some chores. So.
Nice, sticking to it.
Yep.
I like it. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great example of building discipline. So obviously it shows. I kind of guessed what your answer would be on that.
Yep.
What about like expectations around the way you communicate with the rest of the family? and it doesn't sound, I mean, you sound like a pretty even kill kid. You probably didn't have to address this a lot, but was that, did anything come to mind on that? Is that like, I think of, you know, the way you're going to speak to your mother, the way you're going to speak to me, like, is that something you felt like you had to address at any points, or?
I think any attitude got nipped in the butt pretty quick.
Yeah?
Is what I would say. Sorry, you can go ahead.
No, that's a
No,
good
you're-
answer.
Yep. Yeah, that is the right answer. Anytime he would get a little lippy, or our daughter with my wife or I, you know, yeah, we nipped it in the bud real fast and moved on. So and
It was less about you need to respect me. It was more you need to respect everyone. I guess I learned that over time, that don't be nippy, don't have attitude with anyone, because nobody else deserves that.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, because it's they talk about one of the things when you like one of the things that parents are being challenged with today is, you know, a kid's throwing a fit out in public, and there's no sense of there's other people around, and this isn't just about what you want. There's other people involved here, and it's a you know, if you're gonna scream at the top of your lungs in the middle of an airplane, it's not just your life that's being disrupted here, and so just that they talk about not enough parents are putting that focus on, like you said, there's other people here. You know, the way it's not like you said, it's not so much about the way you're going to talk to me, but it's the way you're going to speak to other people. So, and it shows, right? Like it shows in the way you talk to people. So, how did you get along with your sister? I'm curious about that.
I'd say we hated each other until maybe I was like a sophomore in high school. It was just a constant. I mean, obviously loved each other to death, but had our very fair share of disagreements and whatnot. So, I don't know. It's a pretty short.
He was
answer,
a little
but
stinker when he was little.
I think
I'd
it was
say
my
three-
job to rile her up, make her angry to my entertainment, and it was her job to beat me up or tickle me to death when she was bigger than me and whatnot. And yeah, so I would say we butted heads a fair share growing up, and then we matured and
It clicked one day.
Yep.
No, that's interesting, because I feel like I see that a lot. I know I grew up. I have 4 older sisters, and I mean we fought constantly, and I'm sure I was the biggest nuisance on the planet to them most of the time. And but at the end of the day, yeah, I mean it's funny. I know I have friends who or even acquaintances that never seem to fight with their siblings, and then they're almost estranged anymore. You know what I mean? So I'm not saying there's like a necessary link there, but I do think it's interesting that a lot of kids who end up being really close with their sibling did butt heads and fight and feud when they're growing up. So
and now they have a real good relationship and like hanging out together. So, but yeah, when he was, I'll say 3 to 7 years old, he was a little instigator. Always.
I'd stretch it to 12.
All right, maybe 12,
13.
Always, how many buttons of hers can I push? So.
I think it was around that time. We were 4 years apart, so I would have been 8th grade the year she graduated. And it was around that time she went off to college, and it started to set in. I don't get to see her much, and the time I do get to spend with her, I don't want her to remember me being an asshole to her. Sorry, really. But I want her to remember me, being a brother that she loves. So I think that kind of helped.
You mentioned taking the phone away. So when did he get a phone? I'm curious about that. When did you first get one?
I believe around 6th grade. Does that sound about right?
6th grade.
And prior to that, we were going to wait till he got into high school.
Yeah.
And he was playing so many sports, and a lot of times his sports team the practice would end early. That's what kind of spurred the whole thing. Is one of his practices got out like an hour early, and he didn't have any way to call us, and he finally got somebody else, another parent, I think, gave us a call and said, "Hey, Logan's here at the school. He's ready to be picked up," and they got out of practice early. Yeah. And that's when my wife and I started talking about, well, maybe we better go ahead and we'll get him a phone, but there's going to be some rules on it. You're not going to be on it all the time. I think we had a limited, I think you could only call so much at first.
I don't remember.
Yeah,
this is out of my. I don't remember.
I believe I know we had some rules, some ground rules.
Did you lock it down? Like the phone?
Yeah. Yep. And then as time went on, okay, we'll ease the restrictions a little bit, and but yeah, it was a couple of years sooner than we had really planned on getting him a phone. But he was so active with different sports that we're like, all right, he probably needs one. I guess we can justify that one. So.
Yeah, I feel like we had the same thought. That's usually the thing that pushes, like, I think parents like us over the edge is just trying to, okay, I need to know where you're at, or be able to get a hold of us if you need to.
Yep.
But then, I think it's important too, because you mentioned like taking it away. Um, I guess because I know parents who the thought of taking the phone away from their kid, and not because they need to get a hold of them. I think we use that for as an excuse sometimes, but I think just for I hear it all the time. Like, well, that's how they stay connected with their friends, and that's how they, that's how all these kind of social connections. And I'm curious, like, did that play a role? And like, if you're going to pull the phone, is that going to play a role in whether or not you pull the phone, or is that?
There were different things like his video
PlayStation
game.
was the big one.
Yeah, the PlayStation. Would
That was the whole life for, if I'm not playing sports or at school, I'm video gaming it up on the PlayStation. And so I spent so much time on it that when they would take it away, it felt like such a punishment, even though, now I'm barely on it. So it doesn't seem like a big deal now looking back. But yeah, as a kid, it's so important to me. And so they would take something like that away.
And it didn't take long that whatever it was that got that taken away to start with, that habit went away, and okay, you can have it back. And he learned because, he didn't want to lose that PlayStation or the phone or whatever it was, So.
Yeah. They talk about the statistics around, I don't have them off the top of my head, but they know like teenagers especially girls, but teenagers in general, like phones they're challenging. And I think some parents are like so afraid to pull that phone away. And I guess part of me doesn't get it. Like, I think I get it to a point, but at the same time, I'm like, man, if it's unhealthy for them, you got to be willing to, like, it's not going to kill them. I promise. They're going to be fine.
Yep.
What about rules around the house? Did you have a curfew?
Once I got a car, I think it was 10 o'clock on school nights and maybe 11 on the weekends or something like that. But before I had a car, I don't think I had a specific curfew because I couldn't go anywhere, or I was at a friend's house and they knew I was spending the night at a friend's house or something.
Gotcha.
Yeah, he did have a curfew, and we still, even though he's in college, it's not like a set curfew, if you will. But we do ask that they try to be in a decent hour, especially if I've got to get up for work the next morning, whatever.
It's
that
the
kind
dogs,
of thing. So,
yeah.
And our dogs will bark and wake everybody up. So that's all we ask you, even as an adult, that just be respectful of the rest of us in the family. So.
Yeah, it's a good point too. You talk about, he's out of high school, he's over 18, but the rules don't stop. I mean, you're still living in our house, and there's still wisdom to be gained from a dad, right? So, you talked about this a little bit. You said he was a bit of a stinker growing up. So, but what kind of characteristics, like personality wise, did you see in him?
He was a prankster, just a little fun.
Yeah?
He was a fun kid, when I say stinker, he wasn't bad by any means.
Yeah.
He wasn't doing anything bad. He just,
I wanted attention.
He was an instigator. He'd poke at his sister a little bit. But he, as a young kid, he was really just a playful kid. I mean, I don't know how to describe him. Maybe he was Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn or something, just doing goofy little stuff, but not nothing that was like bad, that was going to get him in trouble, nothing dangerous or whatever, nothing like that. Just
any way I could get the attention. That's about as simple as it was.
It's funny. Well, maybe you got enough growing up. That's why you're humble now. So you didn't feel like you had to push that out of him either, right? Like did you feel like you embraced it, or you found ways to embrace it?
There were times that were like, all right, that's enough. Yeah. Settle down. But you don't want to break that fun. You don't want to break a kid's spirit, I guess. And every kid's wired a little bit different. Yeah. He was really outgoing, and where maybe a kid that's in a little bit of more of a shell, maybe you need to encourage them. Him every now and then we had to, all right, tone it down a little bit, But no, there really wasn't anything. Definitely didn't want to break that fun spirit that he had.
So Logan, what kind of things would you say you learned? If you could, some maybe key things that you learned from your mom and dad. Oh, it's a pretty broad question.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think of the right words right now, but selflessness, I would say, is the most important thing. So I think to them, me and my sister mattered more than anything. Whether it was their being able to give us time or giving us opportunity, they were always so selfless to us, and I always took that to try and be selfless to others. I would say is a big takeaway. Sorry, this isn't not really one to be able to ramble on about all this, but yeah, I would say their selflessness is what stuck with me, and I think my sister too, in how to treat others and how to give our time is to be selfless to others.
Yeah, that's gotta feel good. It's a good thing to
Yeah,
take away.
yep.
And it's
And
you
then he's-
mentioned it too. Like you've got your daughter, and then your wife too, who I know well, and that's a good way to sum her up. I mean, our first kind of introduction to her was running the concessions at the school, and just the fact that she had it running well, and she invested so much time. You could tell how much time she invested in it. And so it really shows too. Like I said, I don't mean to downplay that. I just like I said, when we it's funny because even going back when we came to this school, there's a whole story behind that, how we ended up here. But one of the things that I noticed right away, and it was your group in particular, you could really see it, was just a lot of really active dads. And it just showed. Like I said, you could see it in the kids, you could see it in the way they behaved. And I even heard stories, and I think I might have even heard one about you doing this too, but just there was a sense of when things were going on in the school, it wasn't just go run and grab a teacher. As the the 11th graders and 12th graders in the school, you guys took it on yourselves to go, hey, wait a minute, this is not okay. Catch two kids fighting, and watching a senior like grab those kids and drag them to the office and go, these guys were fighting.
I heard that one specifically, I think was Tarek.
Yeah.
Tarek Bauer. Yeah. I think there were some 8th graders or 9th graders nipping at each other, and he propped them up, walked them to the office, dropped them off, and said something like, take care of this kid, and handled himself. And them kids, all right, didn't do it again, that type of thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And Tarek's dad, Dustin, was one of those kind of dads that was really involved. Dana Veal, Jerry Anderjack. I could go on and on. There's a whole bunch of really good dads.
They're all on my list.
That were involved with those kids.
Yeah.
And I think that plays a part in the way a lot of those boys turned out. So.
Yeah, I think sometimes the easiest way to spot is when you look at the sports, but that's like a byproduct of that. You know what I mean? Of those dads being around and being involved with the kids, because, like I said, it's not just the athletics, it's the athleticism, it's the discipline, the hard work, and I think that it shows in the way that group acted, and what a cool example of leadership. So, just that thinking, it's just it's kind of an old way of thinking if you think about it. If we think about like back when we grew up, I feel like that's a story you would have heard back then more so than now. And so to hear it now, it's like, wow, that stuff's still going on. There's still guys who are instilling that in their kids. Because I do feel like that's a trait that I'm not saying you can't get that from your mom, but I do feel like that's something you're going to pick up from a dad, that control factor. So, well, anything you can think of that like I said, one of my heart really is two things. One is, inspire the dads who could be spending more time with their kids, and inspire the dads who are going, I want to be there. I just feel like how can I be better at it? So when you think about that, what kind of things would you tell a new dad? Which I'm sure you'll share directly with Logan at some point, right?
Well, probably 5 minutes after we leave here, we'll come up with some really great, something that Socrates would have came up with, a really great quote or something on
rival Socrates for its thought. Yeah.
But I think, as I said right at the beginning, just be present, give your kids opportunities and let them try things. And even if it's not something that you are interested in, if they're interested in it, take some time to get to know what inspires them, I guess.
So he's big on time. I'm big on the role model, and I think my dad was always the role model of I want my kid to be like this one day, and I got to learn from that. So I think monkey see, monkey do. We talked about the song, I saw Dad do this and whatnot. So I think my dad's always tried to be the person that he wants me to be one day, and that's how it stuck so easily.
I think that's the hardest part as a dad, right? Is living up to what you want them to be. I heard a great quote that was, I'm gonna butcher it, but it's basically it. I want my kid to be a better man than I am. You know what I mean? Is the gist of it. And so I think we're always like, I think it's easy to focus in on the mistakes we make. I know I do that. I'm always feel like, man, I wish I hadn't done that or wish I hadn't done this, but, doing our best to try to role model it for our kids. So, but it's a good point because it ties right into what you're saying too, which is like, it's pretty hard to role model if you're not there, right? Like, I mean, you got to be present, you got to show up. And that I think is probably like one of the biggest takeaways for dads, right? It's just like, show up, you'll make mistakes, you'll get stuff wrong. But if you're showing up, it's you're showing up and you're doing your best to be the person you want them to become, then it's going to wash out in the end. Yep. So I brought this up a little bit earlier, but do you see like what kind of things do you? So you mentioned one right away, but things you want to model that you saw your dad do, and what? So it sounds like one is try to be the person you want your kid to be. Do you see things where, I know this is kind of the tough one, but do you see things where you go, there's things I would have done differently, or things where you go, this is an area like, I hate to say better because I know you don't want to throw your dad under the bus, but at the same time, do you go, is there things that you saw growing up where you're like, man, I'd probably do this different?
From a from a role model perspective, no. And I guess that might be something to come when I have my own kids one day, and I'll be able to learn. Yeah, all right, maybe the way he did it, I'd like to do it differently. But from my perspective now, no, I probably wouldn't change a thing.
Well, I think that's a really healthy perspective too, because one of the things that I see a lot today too that drives me crazy is I see parents who are really well-adjusted adults who are trying to do everything different from the way their parents did it. And it just blows my mind. In fact, I've actually had the opportunity to tell my mother to her face. I've said, I worry sometimes that I'm changing too much. Like, I want to raise my kids the way you did, because I look at the five of us and we're healthy, well-adjusted adults, and we're living our lives, the way you would have hoped we would. And so, and then, to then see people who are trying to rewrite the whole parenting playbook. And I'm just going, I mean, are you that disappointed in the way you turned out that you want to change everything? And so I think that's pretty cool that you're looking at your dad going, no, I really kind of want to replicate it again. So I think that's pretty cool.
I think parenting's kind of, and I'll use a sports metaphor, but baseball. If you've got a kid that's just learning how to bat, you're not going to teach them everything. I mean, you look at the major leagues, there's 100 different stances with major leaguers. So there's 100 different ways to parent, or 1,000 different ways to parent. But if you get them in the box, you get the bat in their hands the right way, then you let them figure it out from there. Give them the tools that they need to succeed, and maybe they'll want to widen the stance out. And I'm talking a baseball metaphor. Maybe they want to do a little bat shake, whatever. But you'll find out what works for your kid, and you'll find out what works for the parenting part. There's the basics, but then everything else is, I'll call it an audible, that you learn on the fly, and no two kids are the same either. I mean, Logan and Allie were brought up the same way, but they're different. The way they learn is different. The way that we talk to them sometimes is a little bit different. And I think, you grew up with a family of 5 kids, so I'm sure your parents, there were a little bit different ways that your parents could reach you. Some kids, maybe need the pat on the back a little bit more. Some kids, and I know some of the kids Logan played sports with, they need you to ride them a little bit. Every kid's different. So.
Well, I think it's a perfect place to end it. I think you had your Socrates moment there. So yeah, no, it's I think this is a great point too, because I feel that. So we have 2 adopted kids too. And man, it is different. They're when they don't share your DNA, they're just different. And it's not about better or worse. It's just, you're right. The way that you parent them looks different. And the way every kid needs to be reached. So I think that's, like you said, there's a principled foundation that works for everything. But then, that's a cool way to put it. Like then you throw audibles for the rest of it. But yeah, I love that. So yeah, that's awesome. Well, man, again, I appreciate it. I appreciate you guys both doing it. Like I said, I appreciate you being my guinea pigs, and all good stuff, great thoughts, and keep doing what you're doing, man.
Well, thank you. This has been a lot of fun, and We're from Corona,
Yeah.
and as you know, there's a lot of pretty good dads here in Corona. So I have a feeling you're going to have plenty of good candidates to do this down the road with.
I got a bunch already on my list, like to start with. So, but we started in the right spot. So, and good luck in school. Keep going. Looking forward to another season just wrapped up, right?
Yep. I'm excited. We'll do a little fall season, the first semester next year, and then back to it in the spring. We started in February, so yeah, it's a pretty early start, but yeah, I'm excited.
Some cold days at the ball field.
That was my least favorite thing about baseball. Is the first like month.
Mm-hmm.
Is
well,
brutal.
For
you, it's going to be a lot more than a month.
They start so early that it's the first 6-8 weeks. It's some cool weather, but it's fun. I wouldn't trade it for anything. So
love it. All right, well, good. All right, well, you got a hard stop, so I'll let you get out of here.
All right.
Thanks.